Good morning, Mark Conlock, Director of Horticulture here at Green Bay Botanical Garden, getting ready for some Mondays with Mark 2022 version. Hard to say that, I almost forgot what year it was actually. We're celebrating a belated Earth Day here at Green Bay Botanical Garden, and I want to give you a couple, maybe 3 tips actually for some more sustainable gardening practices as you think about cleaning up your garden in this springtime. So one thing we started doing here at Green Bay Botanical Garden that we did a lot of in our grand garden area and some of our natural areas, but we're starting to think about in other spots, is not cutting our perennials all the way down to the ground. So these guys here, they just happen to be up a little bit, but usually what we started doing in other areas is only cutting them and leaving maybe 12 inches of stem, because we read in some of Doug Tallamy's information that the insects that overwinter in stems, the majority of them do it in the bottom foot of the stem. So we figure, hey, we can kind of do some cutback, but also save some insect habitat. So that's one thing to think about when you're cutting back your garden. Once it warms up and everything emerges, then you could cut it down the way you do, or just let it kind of, desiccate and die and dry down. I call it dying down and drying down, actually, and then it all gets hidden. The other sustainable practice we've been doing is leaving the leaves in the bed. So sometimes we used to blow all these leaves out of here, but as you can see, the bulb foliage comes up through it. You can knock it off if you want to, but it's going to push through there. It has some strength to it, and your perennials will come up through that, and then it'll actually be a mulch. So think about this, you might not have to buy so much mulch because you have the leaves you leave in place. And the other thing we learned, again from Doug Tallamy, is that the majority of moths and caterpillars, they actually pupate on leaf material on the ground. So we always think of the monarch kind of hanging on a plant and you see that chrysalis, but a lot of them, or the majority of them, actually pupate on leaves. So when you remove all that leaf material, you kind of remove their habitat and where they can complete their life cycle, so you'll have less butterflies. So if you leave them, you should have more butterflies and more insects in your garden, and they'll eat all the bad things. Those are a couple of tips for cleaning up your garden beds. In essence, less is more. If you do less maintenance, you probably will have more habitat. The other random thought I had was I was reading an article in American Gardener magazine, and they were talking about maintenance and how it's not the end of the world, and thinking more about being a steward. So that's what I was thinking about. It's like being a steward of the natural environment through your gardening practices. So think about how you can create habitat and be a better steward of our earth through the way you garden. Ties into Earth Day. All right, another final tip for today is our turf grass. It takes up so much of our our yards is lawn. So think about maybe later segment we can talk about transitioning turf to more planting beds in natural areas. But when you do have turf, usually this time of year you see a lot of people kind of raking it out and kind of cleaning out the thatch, and that's something we do here at Green Bay Botanical Garden. And then you also usually consider fertilizing kind of this time of the year, although the best time to fertilize is actually in the fall, which we can talk about then. But if you do fertilize, or you see people fertilizing, remember, you don't want to have that go onto your hardscape areas that run off into different water courses and then say the Green Bay. So you need to make sure that you sweep that stuff back into your pervious surfaces, your grass or your planting bed, so that when it rains, that goes down into where it's supposed to go and it's held in the soil. You don't want to be the person that is causing the dead zones and the algae blooms in Green Bay and other water courses. So make sure that you keep that fertilizer, especially the phosphorus, which is the limiting nutrient in lake ecosystems, out of the water. So those are a couple tips for sustainable gardening. Check out our website, gbbg.org, or our Facebook page for more tips and information on sustainable gardening.